Hello! Welcome. Welcome. Sunday night, Monday morning, Monday afternoon. It's a time zone for you.
12 hours before our rehearsal dinner, her ex posted a story of her in his hotel room. Timestamp matched her bridesmaid spa night. I showed it to her mom, then canceled the catering. She showed up hungry and found out she wasn't the only one left starving. I was sitting in my apartment at 11 p.m. on Thursday night, scrolling through social media like an idiot when I should have been sleeping before the biggest day of my life. Tomorrow was supposed to be our rehearsal dinner, and Saturday would be the wedding. 3 years of planning, $40,000 saved up, and 2 families flying in from different states to watch me marry Cassandra. My phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. Someone had tagged me in a story. I clicked it without thinking much about it, expecting maybe one of my groomsmen posting something stupid about the bachelor party we'd had last weekend. Instead, I found myself staring at a story posted by Derek, Cassandra's ex-boyfriend from college. The guy she'd dated for 2 years before we met, the one she claimed she hadn't spoken to in ages. The image showed a hotel room at the Marriott downtown. Nothing too suspicious at first glance, just a messy bed and room service trays scattered around. But then I noticed the timestamp, 9:47 p.m. tonight, and there, barely visible in the corner of the frame, was a pair of heels I recognized immediately. The same red Jimmy Choos I'd bought Cassandra for her birthday last year, the ones she'd worn exactly 3 times because they were too expensive to risk scuffing. My stomach dropped like I'd been punched in the gut. I screenshotted the story before it could disappear, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. According to our shared Google Calendar, Cassandra was supposed to be at her bridesmaid's spa night at the wellness center across town. She'd left our apartment at 6 p.m. with her overnight bag, kissing me goodbye and reminding me not to stay up too late because we had a big day ahead. I called her phone immediately, straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same thing. My mind started racing through every possible explanation that didn't involve what I was thinking, but the evidence was right there on my screen. The timestamp matched perfectly with when she was supposed to be getting facials and drinking champagne with her girls. I threw on clothes and drove to the wellness center. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a few cars I didn't recognize. Through the large windows, I could see the spa was closed, completely dark inside. The sign by the door said they closed at 9 p.m. on weekdays. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Next stop was the Marriott. I parked in the guest lot and walked through the lobby, trying to look casual while scanning for any sign of Cassandra. The elevator took forever to arrive, and when it did, a couple got off laughing and holding hands. The sight made me want to throw up. I didn't have Derek's room number, but I knew he was somewhere in this building. I wandered the halls for 20 minutes, listening at doors and feeling like a complete psychopath. Finally, on the 7th floor, I heard voices through a door at the end of the hallway. One of them was definitely Cassandra's laugh, the same one that had made me fall in love with her 3 years ago. I stood there for probably 10 minutes, just listening and trying to convince myself I was wrong. But then I heard Derek's voice clearly saying something about how he'd missed her, and I knew I wasn't imagining things. I took photos of the door number and the hallway, then got the hell out of there before I did something stupid. Back in my car, I sat in the parking lot staring at my phone. The screenshots from Derek's story were still there, undeniable proof that my fiancée was lying to me 12 hours before our rehearsal dinner. I had 2 choices: confront her directly or gather more information first. Something told me to choose the second option. But as I was sitting there, my phone buzzed again. Another Instagram notification. This time it was from Cassandra's best friend Monica, who was supposed to be at the spa night with her. The story showed Monica at home in her pajamas, watching Netflix with her boyfriend. The timestamp read 10:15 p.m. If Monica was home, who exactly was at this mythical spa night? I started checking the Instagram stories of all of Cassandra's bridesmaids. Whitney was at a bar downtown with coworkers. Jen was having dinner with her parents. Amanda was at home studying for some certification exam. Every single one of her bridesmaids was somewhere else, doing something completely different from what they were supposed to be doing. The spa night was completely fabricated. Not just an excuse for Cassandra to sneak off with Derek, but an elaborate lie that involved her entire bridal party covering for her. These women had looked me in the eye for months, talking about wedding plans and how excited they were for the big day, knowing the whole time that their best friend was cheating on me. That's when I realized this wasn't just a moment of weakness or a recent mistake. This was a coordinated deception that had been going on for who knows how long, with multiple people actively participating in making me look like a fool. I drove home and spent the next 3 hours going through everything: bank statements, phone records, social media activity, anything I could access that might give me a clearer picture of what was happening. What I found made my blood turn to ice. Cassandra had been Venmoing Derek money regularly for the past 4 months. Small amounts, usually $50 or $100, with vague descriptions like dinner or gas money. Her location sharing, which I'd never bothered to check before, showed she'd been to his neighborhood at least 6 times in the past month when she'd told me she was working late or meeting friends. The most damning evidence came from her laptop, which she'd left open on our kitchen counter. Her email was still logged in, and buried in her deleted folder were reservation confirmations for hotels, restaurants, and even a weekend trip to the mountains that she'd never mentioned to me. All of them for 2 people, all of them on dates when she'd told me she was busy with work or family obligations. But then I found something that made everything 10 times worse. Hidden in a subfolder labeled Work Docs were screenshots of text conversations between Cassandra and her bridesmaids. They were planning the whole thing like a military operation. Monica was the point person, keeping track of which lies had been told and when. Whitney handled social media coordination, making sure their stories aligned online. Jen was the backup alibi, ready to confirm whatever story Cassandra needed. The conversations went back 8 months. 8 months of detailed planning about how to hide her affair from me. They had backup plans for their backup plans. They'd even discussed what to do if I got suspicious, with Whitney suggesting they could make me think I was being paranoid and controlling. The worst part was reading their opinions about me. They called me boring and predictable behind my back. Monica joked that Derek was probably better in bed than I was. Whitney complained that I was too clingy and that Cassandra deserved some excitement in her life. These women had sat at my dinner table, accepted gifts for the wedding, and pretended to care about me while actively working to humiliate me. But the real kicker came when I found a group chat from 2 weeks ago where they were discussing the wedding itself. Cassandra had told them she was having second thoughts about marrying me, but didn't know how to get out of it without looking like the bad guy. Monica had suggested that maybe I would call off the wedding if I found out about Derek, solving her problem for her. They were trying to get me to discover the affair. The Instagram story, the obvious lies about the spa night, even Derek tagging me in his post. It was all designed to make me find out and be the one to end things, so Cassandra could play the victim and avoid taking responsibility for her choices. By 3 a.m., I had a complete timeline of not just her affair, but the systematic campaign to manipulate and humiliate me. This wasn't just cheating. This was psychological warfare conducted by someone I trusted with my heart and a group of women I considered friends. I should have been furious, but instead I felt completely empty, like someone had scooped out my insides and left me hollow. 3 years of my life, all the plans we'd made, the apartment we'd decorated together, the dog we'd adopted, all of it built on lies and coordinated deception. But then something else kicked in. If they wanted to play games, I was about to show them what a real strategy looked like. I started making calls. First, I called my brother Kevin, who was supposed to be my best man, told him everything, and asked him to help me cancel the wedding vendors. Kevin was a cybersecurity expert, and when I showed him the evidence, he had some interesting ideas about what we could do with it. Kevin pointed out that several of the bridesmaids were in relationships with men who didn't know about their involvement in covering up the affair. Whitney's boyfriend Austin was actually a mutual friend of ours from college. Jen was engaged to a guy named Marcus who'd specifically asked me to be a groomsman in their wedding next year. These women had put their own relationships at risk to help Cassandra cheat on me. We spent the next hour documenting everything and creating a comprehensive file of evidence. Screenshots, bank records, location data, the group chat messages. Kevin suggested we create a private website where everything could be viewed chronologically, like a timeline of deception. It was brutal and thorough and absolutely devastating. But Kevin had an even better idea. Instead of just exposing what had happened, we could turn their own strategy against them. Let them show up to the rehearsal dinner expecting me to be the devastated victim who'd canceled everything in emotional turmoil. Instead, they'd find me calm, prepared, and holding all the cards. By sunrise, we'd contacted most of the wedding vendors. The caterer Helen was incredibly understanding and offered to provide a different kind of meal for anyone who wanted to come and support me. The photographer agreed to document the real rehearsal dinner, the one where truth was served instead of lies. Even the DJ offered to provide sound equipment so everyone could hear what I had to say. The venue was the biggest surprise. When I explained the situation to the manager, a woman named Gloria who'd worked there for 20 years, she got personally invested in helping me. She'd seen plenty of wedding drama over the years, but nothing quite like this level of coordinated deception. Gloria offered to help set up a presentation area and even suggested we record everything for legal purposes. By 7 a.m., we'd transformed the canceled wedding into something else entirely. Not a celebration of love, but an unveiling of truth. And the best part was that Cassandra and her accomplices had no idea what was coming. I met with my parents and Kevin at 8 a.m. at a coffee shop near the airport. They'd flown in from Colorado, expecting to celebrate their son's upcoming marriage. Instead, they found themselves dealing with a level of betrayal that shocked even them, and they'd been through their own divorce 20 years earlier. My mother was particularly upset because she'd grown genuinely fond of Cassandra over the years. They'd spent hours on phone calls planning wedding details, shopping for dresses together, talking about grandchildren. Learning that it was all fake, that Cassandra had been manipulating her emotions while cheating on her son, hit her harder than I'd expected. My father, who worked in corporate investigations, was fascinated by the level of organization involved in the deception. He helped Kevin and me refine our documentation and suggested we bring in someone who could verify the digital evidence in case Cassandra tried to claim it was fabricated. That's when Kevin called his friend Zoe, a digital forensics expert who specialized in social media investigations. Zoe was initially reluctant to get involved in personal drama, but when Kevin showed her the scope of the conspiracy, she became intrigued from a professional standpoint. She agreed to help authenticate everything and create a presentation that would be impossible to dispute. By noon, we had a war room set up in my parents' hotel suite. Laptops everywhere, printouts covering every surface, a detailed timeline mapped out on the wall. Zoe had verified the authenticity of all the digital evidence and created a multimedia presentation that told the complete story chronologically. But the real breakthrough came when my father suggested we investigate Derek's background more thoroughly. A few hours of research revealed some interesting information. Derek wasn't just some random ex-boyfriend who'd reconnected with Cassandra. He was a serial affair partner who specifically targeted engaged and married women. His social media history, dating back several years, showed a pattern of relationships with women who were in committed relationships. He'd tag along to weddings as someone's plus one, then end up having affairs with bridesmaids or even brides themselves. The man was a professional homewrecker who seemed to get off on destroying other people's relationships. Even more disturbing, we found evidence that Derek had been in contact with Cassandra's bridesmaids before he'd even moved back to town. Monica had been following him on Instagram for over a year, and there were old comments suggesting they'd been planning his return and reintroduction to Cassandra's life. This wasn't a spontaneous rekindling of old feelings. This was a calculated seduction campaign orchestrated by Derek with the active cooperation of women I trusted. They'd spent months planning how to break up my relationship and had been documenting their progress like it was some kind of game. Kevin found the smoking gun in Derek's tagged photos. There were pictures of him at a bar with Monica and Whitney from 6 months ago, weeks before he'd supposedly, randomly, run into Cassandra at the coffee shop where their affair allegedly began. The women had been recruiting him to seduce my fiancée. By 3 p.m., we had the complete picture. This wasn't just an affair or even a conspiracy to cover up an affair. This was a coordinated campaign to destroy my relationship, orchestrated by Derek and enabled by women who were supposed to be my friends. They'd been planning it for months, documenting their progress, and treating my heartbreak like entertainment. The venue manager Gloria called to let me know everything was set up for the evening. She'd arranged the room differently than planned, with a small stage area where I could present everything, and seating arranged so everyone could see clearly. She'd also arranged for discreet security in case things got heated. Helen, the caterer, had prepared a menu she called just desserts, comfort food for people dealing with betrayal. She'd even made a special cake decorated with broken heart cookies and the words, "Truth," served fresh. Her sense of humor was exactly what I needed. By 5 p.m., family members and friends were starting to arrive at the venue. Kevin had reached out to everyone on both guest lists, explaining the basic situation and inviting them to come support me if they wanted to. Most of Cassandra's family chose to come, horrified by what their daughter and sister had done. My side was there in full force, ready to witness the reckoning. But the best surprise was Austin and Marcus showing up. Whitney's boyfriend and Jen's fiancée had been told everything by Kevin, and they wanted to confront their own partners about their roles in the deception. The rehearsal dinner was about to become a much bigger revelation than even I had planned. As 6 p.m. approached, I felt surprisingly calm. For the first time in months, I knew exactly where I stood and what was true. The lies were about to end, and everyone involved was about to face the consequences of their choices. Cassandra arrived at the venue at exactly 6 p.m., looking beautiful in the dress she'd planned to wear to the rehearsal dinner. She walked through the door with a bright smile, probably expecting to see me waiting nervously with our families gathered around, ready to practice our vows and toast our future together. Instead, she found about 40 people sitting at tables arranged theater-style, all facing a small stage where I stood next to a large screen. The lighting was different than she'd expected, more like a presentation than a party. Her smile faltered when she saw the serious expressions on everyone's faces. Monica, Whitney, Jen, and Amanda arrived right behind her, chattering about traffic and looking forward to the evening. They stopped talking when they saw the setup, and I watched their faces change as they realized something was very wrong. The real surprise came when Austin and Marcus stood up from their seats and walked over to their respective girlfriends. Whitney went pale when she saw Austin's expression. Jen actually stepped backward when Marcus asked her quietly if she had anything she wanted to tell him before we got started. Derek was the last to arrive, strutting in like he owned the place. He'd clearly dressed to impress, probably expecting to blend in with the wedding party and enjoy watching me squirm through the rehearsal. When he saw the room set up and realized everyone was staring at him, his confidence evaporated instantly. I didn't make a big speech or dramatic announcement. I simply turned on the presentation Zoe had created and let the evidence speak for itself. The first slide showed Derek's Instagram story from the night before, with the timestamp and Cassandra's shoes circled in red. Gasps echoed through the room. The presentation continued chronologically. Bank records showing money transfers. Location data proving lies about whereabouts. Email confirmations for secret dates. The group chat messages between the bridesmaids planning the cover-up. Screenshots of Derek's history with other engaged women. Cassandra stood frozen in the doorway, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to speak, but couldn't find words. Her bridesmaids had scattered to different parts of the room, each dealing with their own personal crisis as partners and family members confronted them with evidence of their involvement. But the presentation wasn't over. Zoe had saved the most devastating evidence for last. Audio recordings from Derek's phone that she'd recovered from his cloud backup. Conversations where he and Monica laughed about how easy it was to manipulate me. Discussions about the best times to schedule hotel meetings. Planning sessions about how to make me discover the affair so Cassandra could blame me for ending the relationship. The room was completely silent except for the sound of people crying. Not just Cassandra, but several family members who were realizing how extensive the deception had been. Her father stood up and walked out without saying a word. Two of her aunts followed him. Whitney's boyfriend Austin was the first to speak. He asked her directly, in front of everyone, if she'd helped plan his friend's humiliation as entertainment. When Whitney couldn't answer, just stood there sobbing, Austin took off his suit jacket, laid it on a chair, and walked out. Jen's fiancé Marcus was right behind him, pulling the engagement ring off her finger as he passed. That's when Derek tried to make a run for it. He headed for the door, but Kevin and two of my cousins blocked his path. Derek started talking fast, trying to explain that it was all Cassandra's idea, that she'd pursued him, that he'd tried to stay away, but she wouldn't let him. Even in the face of overwhelming evidence of his predatory pattern, he was trying to throw her under the bus. Cassandra finally found her voice. She started trying to explain, saying it wasn't what it looked like, that she'd been confused and made mistakes but really did love me. She claimed the bridesmaids had pressured her into the affair, that Derek had manipulated her, that she'd been planning to confess everything after the wedding. But then Zoe played the final piece of evidence. A recording from just 3 days earlier where Cassandra told Derek she was excited about their future together and couldn't wait to be free from her boring life with me. In her own voice, she talked about how stupid I was for not figuring out what was happening and how much she looked forward to the look on my face when I finally realized the truth. The room erupted. People started yelling, some at Cassandra and her conspirators, others at Derek. Monica's mother slapped her daughter across the face. Whitney's sister called her a disgrace to the family. Even some of the men were shouting, furious about the level of disrespect shown to everyone who'd invested time and money in the wedding. But I remained calm throughout the chaos. I'd expected this reaction and was prepared for it. When the noise died down, I spoke for the first time all evening. I thanked everyone for coming and supporting me through this. I explained that I'd canceled the wedding not out of anger or hurt feelings, but because I learned who these people really were and refused to build a life with someone capable of such calculated cruelty. I announced that I'd be filing for dissolution of our engagement, pursuing legal action for financial fraud, and would be sharing the evidence with Derek's employer and anyone else who needed to know what kind of people they were dealing with. The final surprise came when Gloria, the venue manager, announced that she'd been recording everything for security purposes and would be providing copies to anyone who needed them for legal proceedings. Several people, including Austin and Marcus, requested copies immediately. By 8 p.m., the room had mostly cleared out. The conspirators had fled in different directions, probably to begin damage control on their own relationships and reputations. Family members and friends lingered to offer support and express their shock at what they'd witnessed. Helen the caterer packed up extra food for me to take home, refusing payment and thanking me for letting her be part of the most satisfying dinner service of her career. Zoe gave me copies of all the evidence and her contact information in case I needed expert testimony for any legal proceedings. As I was leaving, Patricia, Cassandra's mother, approached me with tears in her eyes. She apologized profusely for her daughter's behavior and handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for the money she'd spent on her dress and travel expenses, along with a note saying she was ashamed to be related to someone capable of such cruelty. 1 year later, I'm living in a house I bought with the money I saved by not having a wedding. The legal proceedings were surprisingly straightforward since all the evidence was documented and verified. Cassandra's lawyer advised her not to contest anything, knowing they'd lose badly if it went to court. Derek not only lost his job, but was blacklisted from his entire industry when his pattern of targeting engaged women became public knowledge. The recordings and evidence were shared widely in professional circles, effectively ending his career in finance. He moved across the country and last I heard was working in retail, still trying to rebuild his reputation. Cassandra moved back to Arizona to stay with her mother, but that relationship remained strained. Patricia told my mother that she's still struggling to understand how she raised someone capable of such elaborate deception. Cassandra has been in therapy, but apparently spends most sessions trying to justify her actions rather than taking responsibility for them. The bridesmaids face their own consequences. Monica was dumped by her boyfriend of 3 years when he learned about her role in planning the affair. Whitney lost Austin and was ostracized by their entire friend group. Jen's engagement ended permanently, and Marcus shared the evidence with their mutual friends to explain why. Amanda, who had the smallest role in the conspiracy, managed to salvage her relationship but had to undergo couples counseling and rebuild trust from scratch. Kevin ended up meeting someone at a coffee shop the week after the canceled wedding, a woman named Taylor who heard the story and was impressed by how we'd handled the situation. They're married now, and I was Kevin's best man at a wedding where nobody was secretly planning anyone's downfall. The venue manager, Gloria, and I became friends after everything. She introduced me to her book club, which led to me meeting my current girlfriend, Sarah, a divorce attorney who appreciates a man who documents everything thoroughly. We've been together for 8 months now, taking things slow and building trust carefully. Helen the caterer became something of a local celebrity after word spread about the truth served fresh dinner. She started offering a special service for people dealing with infidelity, providing support meals, and even hosting small gatherings for those who need to confront cheating partners. Her business doubled in the first year after our event. The story became something of a legend in our social circles. People still talk about the rehearsal dinner that turned into a public trial, the groom who served evidence instead of cake. Most are supportive and impressed by how thoroughly I documented everything, though a few think I went too far with the public humiliation. I don't regret any of it. The public confrontation wasn't about revenge or cruelty. It was about truth and consequences. These people had spent months treating my life like a game, documenting their deception and planning my humiliation. They'd involved dozens of people in their lives, wasted thousands of dollars of family money, and caused emotional damage that extended far beyond just me. Everyone deserved to know who they really were and what they were capable of. The family members who'd traveled from across the country, the friends who'd rearranged their schedules, the vendors who'd worked hard to make our day special. They all had a right to understand what had really been happening. More importantly, Austin and Marcus deserved to know that their partners were capable of such elaborate deception. If Whitney and Jen could spend months helping orchestrate the destruction of my relationship while planning their own weddings, what did that say about their character and integrity? The legal consequences were significant but fair. I recovered most of the money I'd spent on wedding expenses, plus damages for emotional distress and fraud. Derek was ordered to pay restitution and face professional sanctions that effectively ended his career as a serial homewrecker. These days, I'm focused on building something real with someone who shares my values. Sarah and I have talked extensively about trust, honesty, and what it means to truly commit to another person. She's seen the evidence of what happened with Cassandra and understands why I need complete transparency in any serious relationship. We're not engaged yet, but we're heading in that direction. When we do get married, it will be a small ceremony with only people we trust completely. No elaborate planning, no opportunities for deception, just two people making honest promises to each other in front of witnesses who genuinely care about our happiness. The experience taught me that love without trust is worthless, and that people will show you who they really are if you pay attention to the evidence. Cassandra and her conspirators revealed their true characters through their actions, not their words. They chose deception over honesty, cruelty over kindness, and manipulation over genuine connection. I'm grateful now that Derek tagged me in that Instagram story. Without that moment of carelessness, I might have married someone who saw me as boring and predictable, someone who planned my humiliation as entertainment. I might have spent years wondering why my wife was distant, why her friends seemed to smirk when they looked at me, why I felt like I was missing some inside joke that everyone else understood. Instead, I got to see the truth 12 hours before legally binding myself to someone who didn't deserve my trust or love. 12 hours before the rehearsal dinner was painful timing, but it could have been 12 years into a marriage with children involved. The broken engagement was the best thing that ever happened to me, even though it didn't feel that way at the time. It freed me from a life of lies and opened the door to finding someone who actually values honesty and loyalty. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best outcomes, and sometimes the people who hurt you the most end up doing you the biggest favor of your life. But next time someone tags me in an Instagram story, I'm definitely looking more carefully at what's in the background. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.